mentioned that I want to talk about the context of how Git fits into everything. So now that we have a little bit of an understanding of what VCS is, let's talk a little bit more about where all of this fits in within the development model. So we were talking about the fact that when we develop our software, we're just going to develop it the normal way that we always would, except this time we're just going to be utilizing version control system in conjunction with the development process. So that doesn't modify the development process. You still need to do the same stuff like separate style and structure. You still need to develop your JavaScript in the same way. All of that stuff remains the same. All that's different now is that we have another tool to take into consideration, which is the VCS option. So where does VCS fit in? Well, of course, when we've developed our project, we go ahead and we use VCS to make a commit. So we initialize our project as being a VCS project, and we'll talk about initialization a bit later. We initialize the project that we're working on. So here it is, my project, or my VCS project, whatever you want to call it. That's the name of my directory. And inside there, we've initialized the project as a Git, so that Git knows that we want to use it with VCS. All right, we've got Git installed on our system, and Git will place all of the relevant folders that it needs within the My VCS directory. Once we've gotten our project worked to a point where we're ready to utilize VCS, we go ahead and add those files to the VCS project, add those files with the add directive in Git, as well as stage those files in the same sense. And then we need to go ahead and commit those files. Now we'll talk about staging and committing a bit later. This is all just a part of the whole VCS ecosystem. But really what we're talking about is we're just utilizing Git now on our project. So once we've committed our files with Git, and we'll talk about the actual practical implementation of committing files a bit later, Git will then be ready to store our files in a remote location. Now we need to have a GitHub account already set up. Now, of course, as you know, Git and GitHub are two different things. So of course, this is GitHub. And GitHub exists on the internet. Git, of course, is local. Right. So we've just been working locally to this point. What we've done is we've made a commit locally, and now we need to go ahead and make that commit or push that commit to the internet. So to push that commit to the internet, we push it to another version control system. And that is a remote version control system, which is GitHub. Now, of course, there are other remote version control systems such as Bitbucket, but GitHub is just the one that we're going to be focusing on in this case. So we're going to go ahead, and once we are ready with our commit, we are going to go ahead and push our commit to GitHub. Now, when we push our commit to GitHub, it takes all of the work that we've done over here within our project and makes a copy of it on GitHub for us. So it makes a copy of it, which is great because now we have a backup if anything goes wrong, but it's not just a copy, it's a copy including all of the historical data that we have committed locally using Git on our computer. So it's a copy, but it's a copy with a history involved as well. Now that we have now that we have pushed our files or pushed our commit to GitHub, we can then carry on working on our project over here as we normally would, and saving and so forth. And when we save it, of course, then we want to go ahead and do another commit via Git. Once we've done another commit via Git, of course, then we want to go ahead and push that commit to GitHub again. And we keep on working this way. We work on our files locally, we save them, we commit them locally, and then we push them to GitHub. So each time we push them to GitHub, we not only create a backup of those files, but we also create a backup with all of the historical data that we are creating via Git and duplicating on GitHub. Now, this sounds great, but of course, you might be wondering, like, what is this? How does this benefit me in terms of something that I could do otherwise with, say, just like a backup facility? Well, of course, with the backup facility, you wouldn't have the ability to work with other developers. Now, how that works is we're working in our website. We haven't talked about publishing our website yet. We're just working on the development stage of our website. What about if we have another developer that enters in the development process? So here we go. We've got another developer, and this developer decides, okay, I need to work on the same website that we are working on. So what this developer would then do is they would gain access by permissions that you set for them to your GitHub repository. Now, your GitHub repository is where you have been pushing all of your Git commits to. Okay, so this is your basic working directory folder online that replicates the work that you are doing locally. You then give your second developer access to your repository. That developer then clones that repository. They clone the repository, and when they clone the repository, what that means is they go ahead and they create a duplicate. So they create a duplicate of this particular, oops, created too many duplicates there. Let's just go ahead and remove that one. So they create a duplicate of this particular folder on their hard drive. So there it is. They've just created a duplicate of it through a clone. So they can go ahead and do their own work and save and work on this version of the website. Now, they'll probably not be working on the exact same files that you're working on, because that would, of course, cause a lot of conflicts in the development process. So let's say, for example, you're just working on HTML, they would just be working on the CSS, for example, which is great because there wouldn't be any conflicts in the files that you are working on. So effectively, what that means is they are able to work on the same project. Once they have got their project up to a point where they're happy with it, they can go ahead and do their own they'd have their own installation of Git on their computer, and then they would go ahead and do their own commits on their local Git installation within that working directory. Once they've got their commits worked out, and once they're happy with their commits, they can then go ahead and push their commits back to the same repository. Now, we'll talk about the process of merging and all of those complexities when we get to that point, but that's the basic